1. Short backstory. I'm suffering from social anxiety. And the key element to this story is I hate when strangers touch me. I get really uncomfortable and freaked out by it. That and the fact that I did take a couple self-defense classes a couple years ago. Not too much, but enough to know how to strike a punch. So this story happens in the local go-to discount store. The dress code is a blue polo and the store's logo in a big yellow font on the back, and a small logo on the front. It really should not be hard to spot when someone is an employee. I was wearing a classic white shirt at the time, not remotely any hue of blue, and no bright yellow name tag on. Anyway, I was casually browsing the store, putting stuff in a cart I was carrying with me. At some point I decide that I don't really want this random item, so naturally I go to put it back, because I'm a decent human being that doesn't leave stuff laying randomly. In comes Angry Bitch. Angry Bitch proceeds to snap her fingers and say something along the lines of, "Hey, you! Come over here." Like so many others, I ignore her, thinking she isn't talking to me. Because why would she be? I'm obviously not an employee. Turns out Angry Bitch didn't like this. At one point I walk away from her toward the registers to pay for my goods. As I am walking away, Angry Bitch proceeds to walk up behind me, grab me by the shoulder and yells something like, "How dare you, blah blah blah, I'm a self-entitled bitch, yada yada yada, you should not ignore me," and spin me around. As I mentioned, I'm a no touchy guy, and I'm not saying what I did is necessarily okay, but I acted on pure instinct, from what I learned in self-defense. Mid-spin around, I yell as "back off" as loud as I can. A good tactic to use if you're being assaulted or harassed, as it works as a deterrent factor for the assailant, because you're not an easy target, and it also draws people's attention, thus giving you witnesses. And proceeded to give a mixture of a shove and a punch. The result of the punch was Angry Bitch falling flat on her ass and proceeded to yell more obscure things. "What the actual heck are you doing, lady?"
"What the fuck? Did you just punch a paying customer? I demand to talk to your manager right now."
"What? I don't work here." "WTF?"
"You filthy liar, you just assaulted me. I'll have you fired and arrested."
Luckily, a manager was actually in the same aisle as we were in. Why she didn't ask him is beyond me, he's wearing the name tag. And I guess he heard the shouting cause he came rushing over. "What's going on here?"
"Your shitty employee just ignored me, then proceeded to assault me completely unprovoked. I demand that you fire him and call the police."
"Lady, I told you I don't work here. You assaulted me. Of course I'm gonna defend myself." "This man doesn't work here."
"Of course he is. He was putting things back on the shelves."
"He still doesn't work here. Never has either, as far as I know."
"I still demand you call the police."
The manager gave me a knowing look and a smile. Turns out the store has CCTV cameras pointing down just this aisle. "I'd be happy to call the police for you. I'm sure they'll be here soon." "Look, man, I really just want to buy my stuff and go home."
"You're not going anywhere. You assaulted me. You're lucky I'm going to the police instead of beating the shit out of you."
"But sure, wow. Who would have imagined?" Long story short, the manager called the police, and two nice gentlemen in uniforms were with us within 10 minutes, asking what happened. Angry Bitch proceeds to give the story about how I completely ignored her because she had a question, and I then proceeded to hit her and kick her. WTF, I shoved her out of the way. And I tell my story where she keeps screaming about how I'm a filthy liar, and she's a poor victim because she's a woman and all other sorts of crap. The manager tells us he can quickly pull up the footage from the CCTV, and the police were more than eager to see it. About 5 minutes later, we're all standing in the back looking at the footage. "Well, lady, it does look like you assaulted him and he simply defended himself. I don't spot him either punching or kicking you." This results in arguing that would most likely be flagged for excessive foul language, and is just one giant mess of a discussion between her and the officers. I guess it can be summarized that she had a moment, and it ends with her lunging at one of the officers, looks like she was going to slap him or something, and she was taken back to the station with them. Apparently attempting to assault an officer isn't very popular with said officer. I have no clue what happened to her, but I was free to go, and got a free coupon for approximately $35 for the store, which was more than the total I was buying for, so I was quite happy with that. I saw the manager a couple times in the store afterward. Apparently the crazy woman has been banned from the store, but he hasn't heard anything new either. It was all one big clusterfuck of what the heck is going on. 2. During the mid-2000s, there was a local convenience store war going on between 3 aggressively expanding supermarket companies in my area. As a result, some towns in the area had multiple shops run by the same company within a very short distance to one another. The reasoning being that even a small store operating at a loss is better than a competitor having a location near you. The upside to this was that there were lots of part-time jobs available for high school seniors at these stores. This meant that I, along with almost all of my friends, worked for just one company, and that is how the story began. I was midway through a shift in the small shop I worked in, when one of my friends who worked in our sister store, a larger supermarket operated by the same company about 2 minutes away, came running in and was visibly excited. Trying to catch his breath, the only thing he could get out was,
"They've caught the Meat Man!"
Now, Meat Man, for the uninitiated, was a notorious local shoplifter. One of only a handful in our quiet little town, and he generally targeted the larger store to steal, you guessed it, meat. He had been on a thieving spree for the better part of 2 years, but generally only took small amounts of steaks or bacon to sell at the local pub, keeping his heroin habit going. His escapades weren't really enough to warrant the larger stores stumping up for a security guard, as what he stole could easily be absorbed in the shrinkage budget of a store that was placed in a particularly low-crime area. Recently, however, he had become more emboldened, clearing out the meat section of 2 stores completely within a week. And so management had made sure that every employee within a 20-mile radius was made aware of him. He had started to become somewhat of a local legend. Meat Man's MO was to wear a huge jacket with a piece of rope tied around the waist. This meant he could walk up to the items he wanted, shove as much as he could inside the jacket, and run out of the store just as the staff clocked what was going on. The method was simple but very effective, and he knew once he was out of the door the chances of someone on minimum wage giving enough of a damn to actually chase him were slim to none. Now back to my friend. After calming down, my friend began to tell me what had happened that day. He told me that a new supervisor had just started at his store. The supervisor was a young man who had just finished college and was eager to impress his new manager. As fate would have it, he would get that chance right away. The young supervisor was arranging stock when he noticed a particularly shifty individual enter the store, a very skinny man wearing a very large coat. The supervisor thought it was strange that someone would wear such a large coat, considering it was the middle of summer, and decided to keep an eye on the individual. Little did he know he was about to encounter a local legend. The skinny man walked with purpose straight to one aisle, the meat aisle. He stopped promptly beside the steak and, after a quick glance around, began hurriedly stuffing steaks, bacon, and ham hocks inside the oversized coat. The supervisor, being an intelligent individual, reasoned that if the man filled his coat before being confronted, it would make him easier to catch, the added weight of the meat along with the awkward coat discouraging the thief from trying to run. So he waited for the man to fill his coat. He was wrong. The thief headed to the door, but before he could leave, the supervisor ordered him to stop. Much to his surprise, the thief did not stop, and actually began to sprint from the store and down the street. The supervisor, eager to impress, decided to give chase, knowing that the thief would eventually tire and that he had an advantage. He was a cross-country runner. The thief cut down all the alleyways he could see, attempting to flee the supervisor, but the young man could not be shaken from the trail. Panicking and desperate, the junkie began to toss various meat products from his coat in an attempt to lighten his burden. Terrified by the pursuer and becoming weary from the effects of running with so much added weight on his person, he abandoned all strategy and opted for the path of least resistance. Down the hill on our main street, spewing packets of steak and bacon behind him, like some bizarre piñata. Eventually, the toll on his drug-addled body was too much, and after almost 2 miles, his strength gave out. He collapsed on the street, hyperventilating and begging for mercy. The young man casually walked over and, assessing the situation, noticed that by a fantastic twist of fate, he was exactly where he needed to be. The thief had collapsed just 2 doors down from the local police station, and 2 officers were standing outside cleaning their patrol car. A brief chat with the officers and a search of his coat, revealing that for all his trouble he had only a steak and 2 packets of bacon left on him, along with the near 2-mile trail of meat products, were enough to seal Meatman's fate. He was arrested, and my friend had ran straight over from his store to tell me what had happened. All I know beyond that is that Meatman was put on trial, he pled guilty, and received a couple of months in prison. I moved away before he was due for release, so I have no idea if he changed his ways. The supervisor received a commendation from management and a high street gift card for his troubles. Note, I personally would not recommend pursuing an intravenous drug user. The dangers far outweigh the rewards. However, the man in the story decided differently, and now I have this story to tell. Thanks for listening. 3. So I work as a produce clerk in a very big grocery store in my hometown. It's owned by one of the biggest food and grocery store companies in my country, but I won't be saying the name to stay anonymous. The work uniform is pretty simple. It used to be white button-up shirts with jeans and black pants, and an apron and a hat with the colors pertaining to your department. So the seafood department would have a blue hat and apron, the grocery had orange colors, meat had red, and the produce department had green. We also have a restaurant-type deal connected to the deli department inside the store, and they wear both a brown apron and hat. Now our uniform is a bit more slack. We have solid grey t-shirts and a name tag, and that's about it. But my stories take place before the big uniform change of 18. So since I worked in the produce department, vegetables and fruits, I had to wear my green hat and green apron. It's pretty easy to know who's in which department since the colors are all different. Alright, so the deli department is directly connected to the restaurant. The deli department cuts up the hams for people and deal with the fresh cheeses and that sort of thing. I can't even tell you the amount of times people would actively come seek me out, over a dozen meters away or more, to come ask me to cut up their ham when their workers were right next to the deli in the restaurant, that can easily serve as both a restaurant and deli worker. They would often get irate when I told them that I'm not trained to use the slicers and that my job is to stock the shelves with fruits, but that I could happily get a deli and resto worker for them to do it. It also happened often where they would get visibly upset and say, "Well, I asked you, not him." We also have a salad bar at the entrance. They make salads and even do custom orders for people. Customers would often come ask me to fetch them a salad or even make them something during the night. The salad bar doesn't usually have workers past 5, but get upset when I would tell them that it's not my department and that nobody is working there right now.
"But you're all the same, right? You work in produce. You can make a salad,"
is a response I get a lot since they also wear green aprons. I've had people ask me to bake them a cake, cut them fresh meat from the meat freezer, ask me to bake a pizza, cook some fried chicken in the restaurant since there's nobody there, but it's 30 minutes before closing and I don't work anywhere near the restaurant, demand refund for a product totally unrelated to the produce department when the customer service desk is right next to the entrance, and even asked to go clean up a dead squirrel they had run over in the parking lot because it traumatized their kid. The thing is, it's totally fine to mistake a worker to be in another department, but it's just strange when the departments are all color-coded, full of workers, and they come and ask me, standing in the middle of the apple aisle, to go do something across the store when there's people actively working there. Quick story before I end the post. Our telephone system has that system where you press 1 for this, and 2 for that, and if you don't press anything, it transfers you to the customer service desk. I've had people call my department phone, which is a very hard number to mistake for any of the other departments, since it's a very specific number, that you couldn't get unless you listened to the store directory, which actually states what the number is for, and asked me to put aside ribs from that weekly sale for them, ask if we have a certain kind of Lego in stock, and demand to know what kind of ice cream we have under a certain brand. They always get irate when I tell them that this is the produce department, and that unfortunately I don't know, but that I could transfer them to someone that does. 4. So I just got back from my lunch. I was just starting to work on a project up near the registers. I notice a couple of customers in line, nowhere near a lot. I start to take down some shelves to put in new product when I hear,
"Is anyone going to come up and open a register?"
"Okay, I will head up."
"Good idea."
When I get to the registers, I notice there is only one person ringing. This shouldn't happen. Someone must have went on break when they shouldn't have. I try to ask for more help over the headset, but it isn't working. The volume was down, I later noticed. So I asked the other cashier to call some people up.
"She already has, and we're just standing here."
At this point I know that B is trying to make my life hard, because her attitude is very hostile, but I hop on a register. She slams her things onto the counter along with her credit card.
"This is a return."
"Do you have a receipt?"
"No."
"Okay." Looks up and finds in system, "Would you like to do an exchange?"
"No, we better not."
I process the return and ring up her items, careful to give her no excuse to be rude to me. After her purchase is finished, she asks me to make a payment on her account, and hands me a check. I get it all set up for her.
"Just this, and then we'll be finished."
"Can you slide your card, please?"
"Oh, because your fingers are broken."
At this point, I just want the bitch gone. I'm not really allowed to touch customers' cards, let alone slide them, and the terminal is facing her, so why would I do it? I stare at her intently, but she won't look at me. After I give her the receipt, I tell her to have a nice day and she leaves. This just happened a few minutes ago. I'm posting to get this out of my head. Every holiday I work, I deal with the Grinch. Happy 4th, everyone. 5. Happened this Halloween to keep folks in line with the date. Now in my area there's a well-known attraction that runs every Friday and Saturday, and often evenings during the week for events, etc. Doing haunted house, forest, other sort of things. It's good fun. I make it a point to drag my sibling along every time they visit, being as we're both horror buffs. Of course, being Halloween, everyone is in costume, and due to the expected and accurate huge turnout expected, the owners wisely decided to contact their local emergency services to have some staff on site to deal with anything that might happen. Normally, it's just a come when called and have first aiders on site staff. But during major events like this, having professionals due to volume, it just makes sense. Most of the night was pretty simple, helping with minor sprains and nausea, etc. Little things that require no real effort, time, or first aid. Then we get a call that somebody had freaked out in the forest and decided it would be a good idea to go off trail and run face first into a tree. Probably not their best idea. Partner and I arrive and find the person conscious but in a rather large amount of pain. They manage to break their nose quite nicely when they hit the tree, as well as a few fingers in the fall afterwards. Not the worst injuries, but if you've broken a nose or had any facial cuts, you know how they tend to bleed. A lot. So we get them all patched up as well as you can in the field, then send them off to the hospital to get looked after. Routine things in the life of first responders. Then, as you'd expect, we go to head inside and give a report to the owners, letting them know everything is A-OK, and they don't need to change attraction routes due to anything dangerous. Seriously, the routes are well marked, and there's boundary fences preventing most people from running off into the forest. Of course, it's not that simple. Here we have 2 EMS people with a reasonable amount of blood on their uniforms, trying to push through a crowd of average level intoxication. About a half dozen or so people get pissy and looking to start a fight because we're cutting in line. Another half dozen have seen us walking out into the staff areas and want us to get them X, Y, and Z or advise them of wait times for attraction JKL. One person comments how fake the blood looks and suggests a different brand of fake to use, because the color is totally wrong. And more people than I can reasonably count ask for free drug samples because, hey, medical costumes, am I right? That's pretty much it. Wholesome-ish, amusing and uneventful. Once we let the owner know everything was fine, we got changed into spare uniforms, which lasted maybe an hour and a half until somebody threw up on them. It's glorious work and was totally worth university and leaving coffee. Sometimes. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Adventures in Fast Food and Retail, number 37. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, I was a bit surprised when I woke up today to see that Stan Lee had passed away. It was a bit of a shock. I was never the biggest Stan Lee fan in the world, but he was always appreciated the work he'd done. I certainly enjoy many of the characters he created and helped create. I think it's so shocking because certainly in the past few decades more so, he's always seemed like he's been part of the fabric. You know, he's always there. You expect he's always going to be there. Still, 95, very good age. Yeah, I guess I'll leave you there on that cheery note. Okay, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.